All right. Well, it has been a few seconds before a new attendee has jumped on, so I'm going to take that as a sign as most folks are here. It's great to have you all. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Kyle Shelton. I'm the principal investigator of the MADI program, the Mobility, Access, and Transportation Insecurity program, and the director of the Center for Transportation Studies at the University of Minnesota. And I also want to introduce Beth Andrews, who is our research administration manager and the program manager for the MADI program. Want to say hi, Beth?
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. Thanks for coming.
And Beth and I are the primary contacts for the program going forward. My co-PI is Professor Yingling Fan from the Humphrey School at the University of Minnesota. And then we also have on the program team folks from Tool Design Incorporated and the Center for Neighborhood Technology. So that is the MADI program team. If you're curious about more of the structure of that team and where we fit in, there was a preview webinar back in November that is posted to the MADI page that you can learn some more about that. Today, the primary goal is I am going to give a little bit of a quick overview of what MADI as a program is, and then really jump into the RFP, which was released earlier in January. And then we'll leave some time for your all's questions. A couple of just sort of housekeeping matters around how we're doing this. Please post your questions and answers at any point. Sorry, not the answers. Your questions in the Q&A at any point, and we at the end will work through those. So I probably won't stop mid-presentation, but it'll be a big flow of questions that I will work through at the end. We are recording this, and we will be posting the presentation portion of this to the website, probably not the Q&A portion. What we're going to do with the Q&A is take those questions you all ask, take the questions that are asked at the subsequent webinar next week, and we'll be doing one big compendium FAQ where all questions may be grouped, but all questions will be answered and everyone will be able to see those same responses. So whether or not you're able to stay on all of today or attend next week, the content next week will be the same. There may be different questions, but I just wanted to ensure everybody that if there are different questions, we'll be sharing those and the answers as well. So with that, I'm going to jump in. And again, please feel free to drop a Q&A in there at any point. You should be seeing my full screen. If you don't see that, flagging that as a chat or to Beth or I or as a Q&A, please just let us know. All right, so the MADI program, I just want to start again with a little bit of grounding. What is transportation insecurity? The way we're thinking about this is it kind of can be defined in multiple ways, but one of the critical pieces here is really thinking about people being unable to reach needed destinations in a timely and safe and comfortable manner. Whether or not they are maybe missing or not taking trips because of a lack of stable transportation or access to transportation. You could also think of it similarly to a concept like food insecurity, where we often think about that, folks not knowing where their next meal may come from or how they're going to secure that next meal. There's a similar relationship here with transportation, sort of like, I don't know how I'm going to get to that thing. I'm not sure how I'm going to move through my day or get my kids to school. That is sort of the concept of transportation insecurity that we're looking at. And then also just really a fundamental piece of like, missing opportunities or limiting opportunities or not being able to experience things in your home or in your community or in your region or broader because you have a lack of those resources or access to an adequate system. So there's more definitions in our full program description on the website, but just wanted to kind of level set with that. The program itself, again, just at a high level, this is a new program. It's funded by the Federal Transit Administration. We are administering it at the University of Minnesota and are the lead of the MADI program team. So the folks who are selected to participate in the program will be working first and foremost with us and have contract agreements with the University of Minnesota. But obviously we'll have interface and interconnection with FTA, but the University of Minnesota is mediating the agreements and you'll be working primarily with us. It's really the goal of this is to solicit and support community up ideas at closing transportation and security gaps in all of your communities and with really critical populations in your communities. It's not a goal of the program is obviously to find innovative interventions. And we're really excited to see what you guys are proposing and thinking about and how some of those insecurity gaps can get closed. But we also really importantly want to be tracking and evaluating and researching those interventions so that we're not just impacting your community and the folks who are a part of the program in your communities that are selected, but that those are also things that could potentially scale and be shared regionally or nationally. And then finally, just another important piece here is that we're really trying to not every project and every proposal should be tied to transportation and security. There's obviously going to be transportation elements to everything that folks are going to propose, but we also really want to have a pretty expansive definition of what we think about in terms of the interconnections of mobility and transportation and some of the issues that not having access to those things creates for folks. So we're very open to hearing ideas about where transportation and security fits alongside housing or alongside healthcare or broader access to education or opportunity like education. So we really are encouraging you to think in your teams and think in your proposals to think about like, is there a transportation intervention that also hits on these interconnecting pieces? Or is there a really big housing challenge that is intimately connected to a transportation challenge? You can think about those things kind of in any order of operation that you want. And as long as the transportation challenge that we're addressing as a part of that is addressing transportation and security challenges, we're really open to those ideas. So this is not strictly like I have a very defined transportation issue and here's what it is, and that's the only project that's allowed. We're really wanting to see a broad range of proposals because we know that innovative answers can come from lots of sectors and lots of directions. So we really want to encourage that. As the RFP, I'm going to start to get into some of the information from the RFP and the program itself as we go through here. This is a single input, a single intake for 2 phases. In phase 1, which will be selected through the RFP that is live right now, it will fund up to 8 applicants. Those selected applicants are going to receive up to $150,000 to support the development and submission of a demonstration plan. Our hope is that that phase will take somewhere between 9 and 12 months as we figure out what the projects are and what the scale and scopes of those are. That timeline might shrink a little bit, but we're wanting to make sure that the applicants that are chosen have enough time to develop those plans and cement the collaborations they're working with on their team and with us. But that's the goal for phase 1. Those 8 applicants will then submit those plans and potentially a few other small elements of a kind of next step to the Maddie program team, and we will consider and select up to 4 of those initial 8 to do a full deployment. So it's sort of a funnel from the 8 in phase 1 down to up to 4 for phase 2. Those of the applicants that are selected will be receiving up to $700,000 to launch their demonstration projects over the ensuing 2 years. So that's the high level view of the program. One thing that we talked about in the November webinar that I just wanted to rehash here again is that there are different roles for the different folks involved, and we can happily answer some questions about this, but I just wanted to show this graphic one more time, just showing sort of who's the primary responsible party for different tasks and then who's sort of secondary in all of those. As you can see, the most active folks here, as you might expect, are the community applicants and the Maddie program team. From the applicant's perspective, for you all on the call today, the really key tasks that you're going to be responsible for, if you're selected, are in phase 1, that full plan development and that full deliverable, the deployment and management of your program and of your project in that phase 1. And if you go into phase 2, there will be a data collection piece that is a part of that research and evaluation, where, as you can see here, the community partner is responsible to help us collect the data on site and with the demonstration, but the Maddie program team will be there to help shape what those research questions are, what the data collection plan would be, and the evaluation. So the team on the ground, the community team on the ground, is really just going to be helping us get that data as you run the demonstration. And then we do, from the Federal Transit Administration, obviously have the funding and overall guidance and feedback. We also have a Maddie Research Committee that is helping us shape our approach to the research and the evaluation of the programs as they go along. The only role that committee has is also sort of program guidance and feedback. And neither FTA nor the Research Committee is involved in the selection of the sites in phase 1 or phase 2. They're helping us think about how we're evaluating. They're helping us think about how we're setting up the program, but they will not be looking at the applications and deciding. That will be the Maddie program team. So again, just one more way to see this visually, the Maddie RFP on the left is open now. It'll be open until the end of April. We'll select those phase 1 sites. Those phase 1 sites will be operating through the next year, sort of summer of 24 through winter of 25. They'll submit those one more time for review, and we'll select those phase 2 sites to move into demonstration, likely around a timeline of spring 25 through spring or summer 25 to spring or summer of 27. And that's what I just talked through there. So this will be available again as a recording if you want to look back at those dates. To the RFP itself, this is where I'm going to spend the bulk of the rest of the time. The RFP was released on January 11th. If you go to our website, and Beth, maybe if you don't mind putting that into the chat once more, that'd be great. There is a PDF version of that RFP and also an HTML version. The HTML version can be translated through your web browser into just about any language. And if there are issues with that, we're happy to help folks troubleshoot that. The RFP was released on January 11th. It closes, as you can see, all the way over on the right on April 30th. I want to talk about some of the steps in between, and I'll rehash these a few times as we go through. You are on one of the webinars. This one is happening on February 1st. We'll do a similar content one on February 8th for Q&A around the RFP itself. Additionally, we'll be holding weekly office hours. There's a link on our page. It's just a permanent Zoom link. You can jump in and out of it as many times during those office hours as you want. I'll be on there every week, starting on February 13th and running to March 19th. Again, any of the questions that are asked in those office hours, we will be collecting and posting to the main page. So folks don't feel like you need to be on every office hour. We will be making sure any questions asked and information sought is shared with everybody. That is also just as a reminder, if we for some reason need to amend the RFP or ask for something else, we will also be posting those amendments to the website in the same place as the FAQ. So everyone will know if there's a significant change to the RFP or anything like that. That would be more on the content side, not on the dates or anything like that. We wouldn't be changing that as we move forward with that. One of the pieces that I'll touch on in a minute, a bit more detail, is that we are asking you all as potential applicants to submit what we're calling an expression of interest. This is a fairly straightforward Google form. I'm going to show you some of the information that we're asking for on that. It is less formal than a letter of intent. We're not asking for a very specific, very detailed letter of intent. We're just hoping to have you submit sort of the high level, what is your group and what is your idea, and we're going to respond with a quick eligibility check, as I'll talk about in a little bit. Those are going to be due, and everybody who would like to apply, we're asking you to do that by March 15th. And we will be responding no later than April 1st. So you still have a month to, ensure, yes, you're eligible, make sure your proposal's in. We are also gonna set a deadline for general RFP questions that you could send to either Beth or I at any point. That is going to be, that deadline is April 1st, 2024. And again, any questions we receive by then, we will make sure we're posting to the website. And then the full proposal is due by 5 p.m. Central Time on April 30th. It'll be emailed as a PDF to Beth. All of that information is on our website in more detail, including a few other pieces of what we're asking you to do when you email that in the subject line, so we can make sure we get it and confirm that we get it. Got it. So a little bit more detail here. I just touched on these, but the expression of interest, these are the questions that we're asking. I wanted to make sure folks saw what those are. So it's basically which community you are. I'm going to touch on this in a little bit more detail in the eligibility section of today, but we're going to ask you to identify which transit agency, which 5307 transit agency is served by your community. There's a really important thing to clarify here. To be eligible, we want you to have a transit agency in the territory you're proposing your project for. That's a requirement for eligibility. Those agencies, however, do not necessarily need to be on your team. We would hope that there's a lot of collaboration. We hope that there's a really important link to those transit agencies, but we're not requiring a transit agency to be on a proposing team. That being said, as I'll talk about in a little bit more, it is one of the eligibility requirements that you are at least served by a particular agency that we've provided a list of on the website. And so we'll ask you that in the expression of interest. And then as of the time you put it in, who is on your team and what do you think, who are the components of that, who the potential team lead would be, and then a quick description. As you can see, just 350 words. It's not the full application. It's not an exhaustive request, just sort of generally what are you proposing. And then again, we will review those and you will be given a direct yes or no, you're eligible by April 1st at the latest. And then again, the full proposal due on April 30th. So now I'll talk a little bit more in detail about the eligibility. Again, everything is available on the website, including links to 2 sheets that will show you exactly the eligible population centers and the eligible transit agencies. But the first definition of our eligibility is that the project proposed must serve and primarily occur within a census designated urban area of at least 50,000 people. So that list based on the 2020 census is one of the sheets that you can see, and you can try to find your region in there, your urban area in there. If you have a question about that, feel free to reach out to me or to Beth, but it should be pretty straightforward and show which areas of the country have that 50,000 person threshold. And then again, it also must be covered by the active designated recipient, a transit agency from FTA, which is the 5307 program. And there's also a list of those agencies and their locations on the website as well. And then I'll just reiterate that transit agency, the designated recipient, is not a required team member, but one must be present. And that is primarily, again, obviously because this is both an FTA focus funded project where we're interested in the public transit issue applications. And also as we start to think about the sustainability of these projects, having local champions, whether it's a city, a county, or a transit agency, is one of the things that we're going to be thinking about in phase 2, where we just want to make sure, even if it's a nonprofit or community-based organization led project, obviously it's helpful to have those public partners who can potentially have funding and match or potentially apply for grants that maybe a community-based organization is not available for. So just want to give a little bit more context of why that transit agency piece is required. A few other pieces here. As applicants, you can propose a demonstration that is focused on a particular community or geography within that broader eligible geography. So for example, if you have an intervention and you're focusing on a priority population in a particular neighborhood in a city, that is totally valid. It does not have to be, I'm in Minneapolis, so I'll use Minneapolis as my example. Not every program and not every applicant has to say, at the whole scale of Minneapolis, I'm doing X. You can say, we are really working with this community and this type of person or this type of population. Here's our intervention. And it's really focused on this smaller geography. The critical piece there, though, is that that smaller geography or wherever you're proposing that service, again, has to be inside that 50,000 person community, or that service you're looking for has to be inside that 50,000 person community. The one exception to that we heard loud and clear in our listening session in November, and we've tried to create a way to think about this, is that if you are proposing, if you are an applicant or an applicant team that has members of that team outside of a 50,000 person population center, urban area, we wanted to try to create a path where rural or suburban or periphery communities from those core urban areas may have a path to at least say, here's our idea, and see if it fits and see if it can get funded. The way we're thinking about that, though, is that the eligibility for that needs to be that the service or the intervention you are proposing has to be centered on getting those folks from those peripheral areas to a particular service that is only offered in that urban area, right? So this can't be, it's not a mobility intervention between 2 rural communities. You could potentially propose, here's our intervention that's going to allow us to get these suburban residents who may be outside of the 50,000 person urban area to access this particular service, right? Or different ideas of how you do that. So that was one of the things we wanted to try to leave some wiggle room on. But again, the critical piece of the eligibility there is that whatever you're proposing really has to be centered in that urban area of 50,000. So even if folks are coming from outside of it, they need to be being brought to a resource or an opportunity inside the larger community. In terms of team structures, again, we really wanted to allow a pretty good amount of flexibility here because, again, we know that solutions come from lots of directions. So these are the categories of organizations and institutions that are eligible to be on the team. It includes nonprofit organizations, community-based organizations, which don't have to be nonprofits, but often are nonprofits that are really working within a particular geography. Again, we have some more detailed definitions of those two on our website. Federally recognized tribal nations are eligible, local units of government, and that is a pretty broad list as well. Again, of course, cities and counties, metropolitan planning organizations, and pretty much any broad definition of other public special districts could be an eligible team member. So that might be a school district, that might be, a watershed district. There are special districts of all kinds around the country, and we wanted to make sure that they were eligible to participate because, again, they may have an angle into this. Of course, public transit agencies and also private transportation providers. So that might be a micromobility company, that might be a shared mobility company. Those are all eligible applicants. State and territorial departments of transportation. Also, again, just wanted to call out state and local agencies that are not departments of transportation. Again, if it's a housing department, a public health group, an economic group, we want those entities and those partners to potentially be a part of your team. For-profit and private industry organizations that are providing a service to the lead applicant can apply. They are not allowed to be a lead applicant themselves, but you can certainly have industry partners who might be a technology partner or a group that you've worked with who has something that they're going to bring to your team that's eligible. And then also universities and other research organizations can be a part of teams. The important caveat for universities and researchers is that those team members as a part of a coalition can absolutely help collect information and help applicant do some of the research and evaluation work in phase 2 especially. But those plans are going to be created in conjunction with the Maddie team. So any university group that may be involved in a proposal with the purposes of doing the data collection, for example, they're just going to need to coordinate with us to make sure that the overarching evaluation work that is being done is first and foremost serving the goals of the Maddie program. And then we would talk with those groups about what else could be done with that research or the data collection. So, but they are eligible to participate. In terms of the team structure, again, you're going to see this through line multiple times. We're trying to keep it as flexible as we can. Applicants can propose pretty much any team structure or divisions of tasks as long as these few key criteria are met. For phase 1, we are asking that a nonprofit or community-based organization represent at least 40% of the budget. They do not need to be the lead of the team, but we want to see, especially in these first phases, as you're putting together these ideas and looking to serve your communities and particular populations within your communities, we want to make sure that those nonprofit and community-based partners have the resources they need to really participate and support the constituents that they may be bringing to that table. Any of the eligible entities could be a lead, except for those industry partners. Private industry, they can't lead. Any other applicant can. Within that, the lead applicant member must have at least 30% of the budget in phase 1. We did also want to leave open the door that team members who are not receiving funds through the phase 1 budget, for example, if your city or if your transit agency is a partner and is super excited about it, but for whatever reason is not seeking funding out of that phase 1 bucket, they are still able to be a participating member. You can still name them as a part of your team, but they're not allowed to be the lead applicant. So again, any team member can participate without having dedicated budget. The other thing that we would ask in that case, though, would be that you somehow document their intended participation with a letter of support or a demonstration of how they are involved. So if a transit agency is your partner but is not seeking budget within your proposal, we would want a letter of support from that transit agency that says, we think this is a great project, we're excited about it, here's what we're bringing to this table as a non-budgeted partner. We are offering X person's time to participate in these conversations, just as a signal to show that they are committed to the project and that they are a part of it, even though they're not getting budget. And then just one sort of general thinking on the team structure, as I already mentioned, around sort of the sustainability piece of having a local agency or a public transit agency as a part of your team. As we move into the review period, that is something that we're going to take into consideration, is seeing teams that combine that nonprofit community-based org with a committed public agency and jurisdiction. Again, it's not a hard and fast requirement that you have that arrangement, but it's something that we will be valuing and looking for in our evaluation. So it's recommended to have that relationship. A few more details on the budget. Again, I already mentioned that the phase 1 budget is up to $150,000. I keep saying up to because that will depend again on the scopes that we see of proposed projects and just what people are proposing to do and how their costs go. that can support, there is a budget template on the website that you'll have to submit along with your application. The budget itself in phase one should include a budget for a project manager to lead the development of the demonstration plan. We want to see a specific person who's being designated within that lead org to drive this project forward. It is budget for other team members, anyone else on your team, to participate in the development of the plan. There is also a specific requirement that you budget for travel, likely of a day and 2 nights for the project manager and up to one other team member for an in-person convening for some shared learning amongst the cohort of phase one folks, which would happen relatively early. So that's one specific thing to budget for. Other eligible expenses to think about are, we're really looking for groups to do community listening and engagement and think about how they're shaping their project in phase one. So thinking about how you can support that engagement, whether it's honoraria, reimbursement for food, or engagement in other ways with community members. That's something that you can be proposing as well. And then also some of the more technical pieces. So if in your plan you needed to, again, contract with a private engineering firm or something to say, we really want to have a technical detail here. That is an eligible expense in phase one, and but it just needs to be a part of your overall budget. And obviously, is all of that is under that 150 cap. The other thing to clarify here is that for the Maddie program, there is no match requirement. You as local applicants are not required to bring any certain percentage of funding from your local partners or from your team. We again want to have a low bar of entry for applications in and ideas in. That being said, you're also welcome to bring match if you say, hey, we have these partners and they're interested in donating the time of their staff to this program, and that's a way that we're showing our commitment. You can absolutely document that. Again, it's not a requirement. That's not something that in phase one is going to be one of those priority evaluation pieces, but it is something that as we move into phase two and as we think about the sustainability and success of those projects that we're funding, the more commitment and the more demonstration of that commitment from all those local partners, in terms of thinking about, hey, after years 1 and 2 of this demonstration, how will we move forward? Certainly that level of engagement and that show of commitment from partners would be a benefit as we move into stage 2. But again, for the purposes of this application in phase 1, there's no match requirement. If you do end up with any match in kind or in hard dollars, you would just document that with a letter of support, again, from that partner. A couple things just as we think about the proposal, and again, as you look at the website, there's a longer list of what the proposal elements are. I just wanted to hit on a couple key pieces here. When you think about the proposal length is really just 12 pages is what we're asking for. Again, we're trying to keep it relatively short and pretty straightforward. We have a series of items that we want you to talk about in each of the sections, and those sections are the project statement, the project team, and the budget and justification. So we've already talked about the budget. Just on the project statement side, what we're thinking, kind of the key questions that I would highlight out of that list, we want you to answer all of them from the website, but the key ones are really thinking about, like, how are you defining your intervention? Tell us why you're doing that and why it would be impactful. Sort of how are you engaging the group that you're really targeting? If it's a intervention aimed at caretakers and helping them get their charges or kiddos to where they need to be and then getting them back to work. Why is that an impactful intervention? What about your community and about that population is really critical to see a solution there? So really that kind of combines both these, right? So what's your intervention? Why is it going to be impactful? And then who will it impact, right? Really thinking about that priority population, that caretaker example I gave. And we really want you to think about specifically, how do you intend to incorporate that community and that population that you're hoping to work with in the process of creating your project? So in particular, if you're applying for phase 1, we want to have some insights from you all about, like, hey, we're targeting this caretaker population. In order to make sure the project we're proposing is right for them, we're going to do, this series of engagements throughout phase 1 so that we can make sure our project is addressing their needs. So those are kind of the 2 high-level things I would highlight from the project statement. Again, please look at that whole list of the elements that we want to have included in your responses. And then on the project team, again, I just want to highlight at a high level sort of a couple key questions here. Particularly, like, what about the team you have put together, the groups that are involved in your proposal? what positions that team to be effective with your intervention. What is it about the roles people are going to play? What is it about the relationships that you have or are creating that is going to allow your intervention, your demonstration to be most effective? We want you to talk to us about the makeup of your team and why it's going to be so effective. And then kind of part and parcel with that, we also want to understand sort of your breakdown of how that work will be divided and carried out. Again, we want to make sure that the community-based org and the nonprofit partners who are involved are given appropriate tasks and appropriate budget. Same with other partners. So we really want you to be able to articulate, here's what the roles of all these different groups are. And ensuring that folks just we're not just looking for lists of potential partners. We want to see those partners who are actively engaged and working on the project. So those would be a couple things just as you're thinking about the proposal and starting to shape those projects that I would suggest paying attention to. And then again, please do review the full list on the website. And I also did and just wanted to again touch a bit on how we're going to think about selection and review. So again, the program team will be doing that selection and review at the end of the intake of the RFP, come at the end of April. Our goal is to get decisions out by the end of May 2024. Here are a couple of things, and again, this is not the full list. And you can see that full list on the website. But again, I just wanted to highlight a couple of the pieces that we'll be evaluating. So when we think about the project element side of this, we really are going to be looking at like how detailed and how particularly have you been in the type of the population that you're serving, right? Like how well are you able to articulate this is the transportation insecurity gap that we're focused on. Here's who it's going to benefit. Again, also sort of like how well have you identified a transportation insecurity issue, right? Like is your proposal something that is really getting at that core of what we're asking for, or is maybe it a more of a tangential, like we're fitting in a square peg into a circle hole, right? We're looking for that good fit of something that really addresses that series of transportation and security definitions I shared at the beginning. So that's obviously one thing we'll look for. And then also something I know I've touched on earlier is sort of the scalability and applicability of a project. Your project does not have to be able to, cover your whole city necessarily or your state as a part of a demonstration, but we certainly are looking for ideas that we think are translatable, given that we're going to be researching and evaluating them alongside you. We're hoping an outcome of this is that we're also able to say, hey, look at the success that happened in community A. Here was their intervention. We think this is something, or these are the elements of this that are replicable elsewhere. So that'll be an important part of what we're looking for as well. And then again, obviously on the team makeup, as we've already mentioned several times, that inclusion of a nonprofit or community-based org, the demonstrated commitment from the applicant team, right? Again, we don't want just a laundry list of folks, but we want to be able to we want you to be able to show, here's how we're building this relationship, or here's the work we've done together, or here's what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And then also a level of community member buy-in and participation. So that's documenting, sort of saying, we're working with this group to address this. Here's where they're built in. And then lastly, just sort of thinking in this broad category of feasibility, programmatic fit, and long-term impacts. I've mentioned both of these already. Obviously, there's a level of the evaluation here that is just going to be the feasibility of your project and of the implementation. Our team is well experienced in a range of projects, and if you're proposing something that's actually a several $1 million project that includes lots of hard costs and is not going to be viable for a $700,000 project, that's going to be something that's going to be hard for us to say like, oh yeah, let's try that, right? We want to be really realistic about what the efforts are and where those dollars are going to be able to go. And then also something that we'll be considering, especially for the phase two, sorry, is going to be that long-term sustainability of the partnerships and potential future funding going beyond the MADI program. I'm wrapping up here, so if you want to start putting questions and answers in, I've seen a few come up, but I welcome folks putting those in, and I'll work through those in a second here. Just wanted to end by saying there's several future touch points here. If you want to just keep getting great information from us, Beth is going to be presenting on the 8th at 2 p.m., a similar webinar. The content will be the same. It'll just be a different voice you'll be hearing, and another opportunity for questions and answers there. Then, like I said, we'll be doing those office hours every Tuesday from 11 to 12 Central, and there's a link on the page that you can find that Zoom link at any point. And also the question submissions by April 1st. And then the sub bullets here for both the office hours and the FAQ or the questions is just again that those FAQs will all be posted. So you don't need to feel like you need to attend every office hour or that you're going to miss something or miss an insight. We will be tracking and posting the questions and the answers to every touch point that we have with potential applicants. With that, I will open